Now, you get the question all the time of, do you plant your logging trails? And if you do the math, it makes sense. It's somewhat common sense to say, well, if you plant your logging trails and you have 10,000 feet of logging trails and they're an average of 8 feet wide, you're approaching 80,000 square feet, and it's almost 2 acres. So you can get a lot more food on the property. You think, well, for the health of the deer herd and for more putting on for putting more food on your property, then that makes a lot of sense. The problem is, I don't want to see you plant or improve anything unless it makes absolute sense on your entire property for the way you want to move deer around the property. So we come to a trail like this. A water hole right back here. We have a stand location, but then this trail extends through this bedding area down below for quite a ways. 200 yards, 300 yards. We're getting a lot of sunlight down in here because we've cut down a lot for bedding area, a lot of box elder. And you can see some of our cuttings back here where we've had to cut through logs. And so it's a very thick area. And one would think, well, why not just plant that for 200 yards back there? The problem is in a location like this, and it's a lot of other areas, we could have a deer that feeds around the corner. We could have a giant buck, he gets out of his bed, and then he just feeds on that logging trail until dark. We never get to see him over here at a water hole in stand location. So we're gonna plant this logging trail, but we're gonna do it with what we call a green max traffic blend. And what that's for is for lots of people traffic, lots of deer traffic. You can see right now on down here, the soil is pretty freshly exposed. It's not holding together. There's a lot of shady weeds that are growing in here. And what we want to do in this location is we want to plant something that's going to hold the soil, something we can mow, something that'll bring a deer and they can just follow out of this logging trail right to the stand location, but something that's not a forage where they sit back there for a half hour moving 50 yards because there's so much forage value. So what we choose, like I say all the time in food plots, we don't want ryegrass. We don't want grasses. So what does this mixture have? It has ryegrass, has Kentucky bluegrass, has a couple different other grass seeds in it, has a little bit bird's foot trefoil to hold the soil, it has a small amount of vetch, and it has one clover, just a white Dutch clover. And the whole idea behind that is we want something that holds the soil and that we can mow. We want something that offers green. On a forage value, it's a 2 out of 10 instead of an 8 out of 10 like clover, or a 10 out of 10 like another green combination of food. So I don't want a deer, again, around the corner feeding right there and not exposing itself to our stand location right here. Now, another reason you don't want to plant your logging trails, most of them, is if you're actually accessing on that trail to get to a stand location. Last thing you want to do is put a high forage value food at your boots so that you're spooking deer that are foraging on that on the way in or out of your stand. So that's something you don't want to do. So you have a couple places you don't want to. Around the corner in a bedding area like this, where you don't want the deer to hold up and not feed. And then also, there's a lot of logging trails that just lead to nowhere. They don't lead to a tree stand. They might even lead straight from the middle of your property to your edge. And that creates this giant line where deer just go on and off your property. Hey, thanks for watching the video, and we'll be right back. But this is very important. It's a very important announcement. We have our Camp Kicking Bear event. We have it on Father's Day. It's more of a habitat day. We're going to see a feature of habitat improvements, how they will all relate to a bedding area, a water hole, food plot, bedding point, morning stands, evening stands, and then we get to take a tour around the majority of the property too. Bottom line is $350 per person times 50 people. We highly encourage you to bring your kids. After all, it's Father's Day. Those 50 spots always sell out very fast. On that same day, it's from 10 o'clock to 4 o'clock in the afternoon. We have speaking events. All my sponsors kick in for that. So we'll literally be giving away a Matthews boat, a ghillie blind, and so one person will win each of those. For about 13, 14 people will win really good prizes. I could list them all, but check it out. We also have our $100 times 100 hunt raffle to a lucky hunter that'll come hunt with us the end of September for 3 nights. So really check out all that information. Look at the link in the description. You can ask Jessi. She'll help you out with any scheduling of that, and look forward to seeing you guys there. It's a great event. Every dime that's earned goes directly to Camp Kicking Bear, and even a little extra on top of that. So look forward to seeing you there. So there's 3 areas, coming from the middle, coming out, going to a neighbor's. There's no stand location. So when I plant something, I want it directly to relate to a stand location, And even coming from the middle going out, now you're teaching deer to run perpendicular to your borders instead of paralleling. So if it's inside going to out or vice versa, you're pushing deer on and off your property. That's a very bad thing. So if it's an exterior logging trail, meaning exterior 30, 40 yards into the property, it's a connection between stand locations that are based on bedding, feeding, water holes, mock scrapes. You're really trying to set those features and really wrap them together and hold them in place. That's where I might consider actually planting a logging trail with some type of food source, and clover might be decent for that. Now the problem is with a lot of logging trails, or a lot of trails in general that are for deer, they get a little bit narrow and there's too much shade there and you're not going to allow anything to grow. And so that's another consideration, where if it's shady, if you need shady seeds to actually plant it, then it's probably not going to be appreciable enough to even grow. So we're planting a lot of our logging trails in something to hold soil, something that we can mow, like our Green Max Traffic. We're using that a lot. We use that around our water holes like behind me. So you don't want to plant locations that are going straight on and off your borders. You don't want to plant locations where deer can hide around the corner and just keep feeding on a quality plot or a quality trail plot. And you don't want to plant in a location that you're actually walking on to get to stands. So what does that tell you? Well, that area that might have been 2 acres that you're planting in logging trails for food, you'll find that a lot of times 1.5 acres of that, or a large portion of that, is really inappropriate for you to plant food on. You're not gaining that much. You think, wow, 2 acres of food spread out over the entire property. You know, I heard of a Texas game manager one time. They had planted about 20% of a few thousand acres into food plots. Their kill ratio went down drastically. This was back 30 years ago. Why did that happen? Because a buck could step out from anywhere, bedding area, anywhere on the property within 100 yards to get a food source. That meant that they didn't have to travel to get the quality food sources. That meant that they didn't have to move. That meant that they were around a corner in a bedding area feeding, not going to hunter and stand locations. That meant that hunters were walking by food sources and spooking out those food sources. So there's a lot of reasons to not plant the bulk of your logging trails, and unless it's going to another stand location, between bedding areas, between water holes and food sources and vice versa, and all those habitat features, then I'm not going to plant these logging trails, and neither should you. And again, that's why we're planting a low forage mixture here. We just want something we can mow. Something that deer will come out on that trail and they'll follow it because they're not stopping and feeding. And that's another thing, just a side note, we don't want to make 50 mock scrapes through here, thinking, well, more mock scrapes is going to attract more deer. They're just going to sit around that corner and not actually move because they have mock scrapes. There's too many of them for them to hit, in theory. And even this one right back here, this is an interesting one. It's in a perfect location, this natural vine hanging down right here, perfect height, perfect size. But we have our water hole over there. We have our bow stand. This ends up about 40 yards away, a 40-yard shot. So what does that mean for this fall? This will be gone. Because just like we don't want a mock scrape in a location that's going to bring deer away from our bow stand, we don't want a water hole in a location that's going to bring deer away from our bow stands, we don't want a food source, and that would be the bulk of your logging trails, in a location that will either set us up for failure because we're spooking deer that are feeding on it, or it's placing deer on and off our property, or it's placing them around a corner in a location that we can't even get a good look at them while we're hunting, and it holds them there till dark and we don't get a chance at them. So I hope that answers your questions about planting logging trails. And hey, this is coming from a seed company, food plot seed company, WHS Wildlife Blends. If I wanted to sell seed and I was dishonest, I'd tell you, yeah, plant all your logging trails. Really important to do so with this high quality forage. And instead, I'm telling you to, if anything, you plant a perennial on there that you can maintain for years and is a low cost, very low cost per acre. I'm not going to have you keep replanting every year something that you don't need. And that's something coming from someone that does this and hunts this stuff. And I want to make sure that you're getting good advice when it comes to creating habitat improvements that take a lot of time and money on your land for this fall. Now, I don't know if you've checked out our main website lately, whitetailhabitatsolutions.com, but we've really had a lot going on, including hats, books, our web class, and certainly our new seed company, WHS Wildlife Blends. When you click on seed on our site, it'll take you right to our brand new site for the seed company. We have all 12 blends available. So check it all out though. I encourage you, I appreciate you checking it out. Whether you buy anything or not, really appreciate you visiting the site and seeing what's going on, and continue to watch because we have big things coming later this year.